Now, if the U.S. loses its status as the world's reserve currency, we'll experience a depression like what Germany and Great Britain experienced at the end of World War I. I want to say that again. If this happens, we're going to experience a depression. If America goes broke, your family will probably go broke. Imagine losing 75% of your retirement accounts overnight. Imagine there's no money to send your kids to college. Imagine your mortgage lender suddenly forecloses on your home. All these things are probable if the United States loses its position as the world's reserve currency, which we're in danger of doing right now. Welcome, Patriots, to this edition of Common Sense for America. Today, we'll talk about the U.S. national debt and its existential threat to our nation's well-being. And more importantly, we'll talk about what it means for your family's financial future. I'm Bruce Rutherford, your host and commentator, coming to you from the beautiful Westwood Golf Club in Houston, Texas. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like button and give us your review. If you're listening to our podcast, please subscribe to this channel and give us a rating. And folks, this isn't just another economic discussion. This is about your financial survival. Now, how bad can it be, you ask? I mean, we've heard this from you before, and we're still fine, aren't we? Well, let me give you some numbers that might change your mind. Today, our national debt is more than $36.98 trillion. Now, that's $106,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. Interest on that debt is over $1 trillion per year. That's more than we spend on the entire defense budget. Now, think about that for a moment. We're spending more money just paying interest than we spend defending our country. Our interest bill alone is 3.4% of our gross domestic product. Anytime the interest is greater than the growth rate of the economy, which for us is typically 2 to 2.5%. Recently, they're saying it's 1.7%. Anytime it's greater than the growth rate of the economy, economic alarm bells go off everywhere. Now, our total debt is 123% of our gross domestic product. In the year 2000, it was 51.5%, and in the year 1980, it was 34.6%. Anytime it's over 100%, alarm bells go off. Now, the debt has increased 560% since 2000 and 80% since 2018. Since 2000, Congress has spent money like a drunken sailor on shore leave. In recent years, deficit spending has reached over $2 trillion per year. That's a totally unsustainable 6.66% of our gross domestic product. Our debt situation hasn't been this bad since World War II. Now, Moody's debt rating agency recently downgraded our national debt from AAA, that's three capital A's, to AAA, that's a capital A and two A's. That's a one-step downgrade. Now, this follows a 2011 downgrade by Standard & Poor's from AAA to AA. And these rating agencies say that our habit of overspending our revenues and increasing our debt cannot be sustained. Now, I know some of you are thinking, there goes Bruce again, crying wolf again. But here's what's different this time. It's not just me sounding the alarm anymore. Wall Street experts are worried this disaster scenario will come true. Hedge fund manager Ray Dalio thinks we have 3 years to avert an economic heart attack. Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, warns you're going to see a crack in the bond market. I don't know what that means exactly, but it doesn't sound good. Kenneth Rogoff, former head of the International Monetary Fund, explained that every country default, either by outright default or high inflation, occurs long before the debt cancellation forces it to default. Our default, therefore, could come very, very suddenly without warning. Peter Orszag, CEO of investment bank Lazard and former U.S. budget director, said that those who warned our deficits and debt were unsustainable when he was in the government, they seemed to cry wolf a lot, he said then. Now, he said the wolf is lurking at the door. All these opinions appear in a Wall Street Journal article from June 4th, 2025, entitled Wall Street Sounds the Alarm on U.S. Debt. A 2024 paper by Professor Hanno Lustig of the Stanford Graduate School of Business, one of my alma maters, debunks the old notion that U.S. Treasury yields and demand for U.S. Treasuries are immune to the U.S. deficit spending. He thinks the U.S. may have exhausted its ability to borrow cheaply. Oliver Blanchard, former chief economist of the International Monetary Fund, is now warning of a coming financial crisis for the U.S. He says, quote, "At some point it will happen," end quote. Now, these aren't political commentators, folks. These are people who manage trillions of dollars and have been right about major financial crises before. So what? What's the big deal, you say to me? Well, the big deal is the threat that the world's investors and commercial leaders stop taking U.S. debt and nations stop using the U.S. dollar as their foreign currency reserve. Now, to put this in perspective, in 1970, 80% of all foreign exchange reserves were held in U.S. dollars. In 2024, that percentage had fallen to 59%. Clearly, nations are becoming concerned about the strength of the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. Now, if the U.S. loses its status as the world's reserve currency, demand for U.S. debt will plummet and interest rates in our country will skyrocket. Oil prices will skyrocket, and prices for gasoline at the pump will skyrocket. Inflation will skyrocket, and that'll break the back of the U.S. bond market. That could mean terrible things for your own mortgage. Now, we'll experience a depression, not a recession, like what Germany and Great Britain experienced at the end of World War I. I want to say that again. If this happens, we're going to experience a depression, not a recession, as Germany and Britain experienced at the end of World War I. Businesses will be destroyed. Family finances will be destroyed. Suicides will be common. Now, the effect of this is to curtail our ability to react to external shocks. Imagine that we, God forbid, are simultaneously hit with hurricanes on the East Coast and in the Gulf, earthquakes on the West Coast, in Alaska and Hawaii, floods in the Mississippi River Basin, a terrorist attack or attacks plural on the homeland, a war in the Pacific with China, runaway inflation, and skyrocketing interest rates. With our resources already at their limits, how could we possibly cope with such a parade of horribles? Parade of horribles is a phrase I learned from one of my lawyer friends when he was trying to counsel his clients into taking some preventative action. I'm trying to do the same thing with you. Please let me put this in terms we can all understand. Imagine your family sitting at the kitchen table discussing the fact that the mortgage payment and the minimum payment on all the credit cards exceed your total take-home pay. There's no money left for food or insurance or other necessities. And if you don't do something significant, you're going to lose the house. An unforeseen financial disaster, damage to the house or serious illness, will certainly have a devastating effect on your family. Your family could even end up living in the car. What do you do? First, you cut up all the most expensive credit cards except the most essential credit cards. You start immediately to pay more on the highest interest rate credit card, and when that's paid off, you add what you were paying on that card to the payment on the card with the next highest interest rate. And you keep doing this until all the credit cards are paid off. But where do you get the money to do this? Well, maybe dad and mom get second jobs. Maybe even one of the kids gets a job. Certainly you sell the boat and the RV and probably the third and even the second car, and you start taking the bus. Eating at restaurants is out of the question in favor of cooking at home. Vacations are canceled. Life is tough for a while, but it can be done. Lots of families have done it. Now we must do the same on a national level. What do we do about this threatened crisis? Secretary Scott Bessent testified at a congressional committee that, and I'm quoting him now, "We do not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. We have been spending money like drunken sailors, and that must stop. We must begin to run government surpluses and use those surpluses to pay down our debt." Now, in our previous episodes, we proposed 3 constitutional amendments that will go a long way toward fixing this problem. Let me remind you what we said then, because even if DOGE saves $1 trillion, it won't be enough when you're running deficits of $2 trillion per year. First, we give the president line item veto authority that can be overridden only by a 3/4 vote of both houses of Congress. Governors of 44 states already have this power. Why not the President of the United States? Now, Congress gave Clinton this power in 1996. He was used to great effect 38 times. It was used against the city of New York, and the city of New York sued the government, saying it was unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional, that the congressional legislation was unconstitutional. Therefore, we need a constitutional amendment to give the president the line item veto authority that he needs. Second, we limit the House of Representatives to authorizing no spending unless a project in question benefits at least 3 states. Now, this would eliminate earmarks and the so-called bridges to nowhere. The savings would be enormous. Third, we limit all new bills to 100 double-spaced pages or less so that legislators cannot hide new spending inside giant bills. No more of this vote for it and you can read it later business. Now, these 3 amendments will go a long way to solving the problem, but constitutional amendments, by design in the Constitution, take a long time to implement. They're not easy. So what do we do in the short run? Cutting expenditures should be the first thing we do because it should be the fastest thing to implement. Whole departments of government can and should be eliminated. Now, one example is the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I believe it has done nothing but spend money to finance what became urban slums. HUD's budget for 2025 is $72.6 billion in discretionary spending and $185 billion in mandatory affordable housing spending over the next 10 years. That's a lot of money. The best way to stimulate housing and home ownership is to have a growing economy, not to subsidize it with government money. Government has no business artificially stimulating housing. Let's save the $72.6 billion immediately and the $185 billion over the next 10 years. The Energy Department was created to build and monitor nuclear power plants. It appears we do not need and do not want to build any new nuclear power plants anytime soon. The Energy Department plans to spend $51.4 billion in 2025. Now, we learned in Senate hearings that in the last 75 days of the Biden administration, the Energy Department issued $94 billion in grants and loans to entities who offered no financial statements at all to qualify for the money. Now, this includes loans for alternative energy sources that are not viable when natural gas is as cheap as it is today. So let's cut the $51.4 billion and eliminate the loans. And the Department of Education could be eliminated and its money channeled to reduce the debt and to provide scholarships for the study of math, science, engineering, and technology, STEM studies. The 2025 budget for education is $82.4 billion. It also gives $185 billion in loans. Now let's save the $82.4 billion in spending and redirect the loan money to scholarships for kids who want to study engineering, science, technology, and math. Now, we can also eliminate the Department of Agriculture and save $31.6 billion in discretionary spending and $181.7 billion in mandatory programs. Now, so far in HUD, energy, education, and agriculture, we would save $419.7 billion in expenditures. Even that's not enough. Since 63% of the budget of the federal government goes for entitlement programs, they must be cut or at least reformed and curtailed. We must fix Social Security. We should immediately stop paying benefits to newcomers to the system who are not citizens unless and until they become citizens of the United States. Existing recipients should be grandfathered. We should gradually increase the retirement age to 70 and then to 72. And we should also invest the $2.9 trillion Social Security Trust Fund in a market basket of securities professionally managed by recognized experts like Berkshire Hathaway, Fidelity Investments, or Fisher Investments. They could triple the net income of the trust fund and conservatively bring an additional $87 billion or more per year to the Social Security system. Now, Medicare and Medicaid are even bigger problems than Social Security. Government should not act as an insurance company of the last resort. Now, the best approach is to A, do all the things we advised as to Social Security, and B, provide vouchers to people they can use to buy insurance in the open market. We need to slowly raise the eligibility age and take the limits off the payroll tax for these programs. We should also end the SNAP program, that's food stamps, and save $80 billion per year. It's estimated that half the stamps are resold for cash to buy drugs and alcohol. My son bought food stamps at 50 cents on the dollar of their face value when he was living in Bel Air, California. I know this happens all the time. We should stop that. Now, a lot of people don't realize we currently spend about $800 billion a year on U.S. government pensions. A lot of people get multiple pensions at the same time. All government pensions, except military pensions, should be converted to 401k-like systems like those in corporate America. We also need to restructure our tax laws. We should scrap the current 9,000 pages of tax code, just scrap it, in favor of a $50,000 tax exemption for every taxpayer, increasing that to $100,000. Now, if you and your wife work, each of you would get the $50,000 exemption such that you could earn $100,000 as a family and pay no tax. Over 10 years, that would become $200,000 and you could pay no tax. We would eliminate all other deductions and exemptions. Now, above the exempt amount, there would be a single tax rate of 25%, as recommended by the Congressional Office of Management of the Budget. Now, this new tax system would be fair for all, it would be the same for everybody, and it would be very favorable to the poor and the middle class, while providing a tremendous boost to our economy. Almost half of all Americans would pay no income tax at all, but income tax revenues would increase because the rich would pay more because they'd pay more taxes on capital gains. Now, we should eliminate the corporate income tax over the next 3 years. This will bring jobs and capital back from overseas and dramatically grow our economy. The growth in our economy will more than offset the loss of corporate tax revenues. We should also pass a 1% consumption tax on luxury goods and services, and increase it to 10% over 10 years. Now, this luxury tax would bring in $135 billion in its first year and $1.35 trillion within 10 years. All of this money should go to retiring the debt. Remember, the luxury tax would be a voluntary tax. If you can't afford it, you can avoid it by choosing a less expensive item or not spending anything at all. We should dramatically increase the excise taxes on alcohol, tobacco, and gasoline at the retail pump. If we increase gasoline taxes 50 cents per gallon over 10 years up to $5 per gallon, tax revenues should increase by $50 billion in the first year and $500 billion per year after 10 years. A 1 cent per mile tax for the use of the interstate highway system would generate $50 billion per year that we can spend on maintaining that system and other roads and bridges. The federal government is the largest landowner in the United States. I think the number is 680 million acres. We should be much more aggressive in generating new revenues from government land, and we could sell some land to U.S. citizens and companies. Through the State Department, we were giving $82 million per month to the Taliban in Afghanistan for humanitarian aid. I think that Trump has stopped this, but this and other questionable payments should be stopped immediately. This is something that DOGE can do. Look, I know you're probably tired of hearing me talk about the debt crisis. I know I sound like the little boy who cried wolf too often. I keep bringing this up because I'm so afraid that it will happen And I'm afraid we're running out of time to fix it. The difference this time is that it's not just me warning you. The smartest financial minds on Wall Street are saying the same thing. The math doesn't lie, and neither do the bond markets. President Trump and Elon Musk and others are acutely aware of the danger that our debt poses to our nation. DOGE is a good start, but it must be continued and expanded. We began this discussion by noting that our government has borrowed an average of $2.18 trillion per year since 2017. Reversing this trend is a giant task. But history proves it can be done. All we need is the will and the leadership to do it, and we can do it. If we are to survive and prosper as a nation, and if our individual families are to prosper, we must do it. Now, please think about these issues and discuss them with your friends and your colleagues. Consider alternatives, talk together. I'm sure that you will see that with common sense and determination, we can turn the tide. Please give us your comments in our comment section. Tell us what you think. If you're watching our podcast, please subscribe to this channel and give us your rating. If you're watching on YouTube, please like us and give us your review. Now, I hope that you will join us next time when we discuss executive orders. When are they legal? Until then, may God bless you and yours, and God bless America.